Hello everyone, in this video, I will talk about the game theory behind the Cuban Missile Crisis. It was a confrontation between the United States and the Soviet Union which escalated into an international crisis, and the confrontation is always considered the closest the Cold War came into a full-scale nuclear war. Before we talk about it in game theory, let me introduce another game first, which is the game of chicken, so that you can have a better understanding. The word Game of Chicken actually comes from a movie, which is an American movie in 1955, called Revolt Without Cause. In this movie, it describes a story like this. Several naughty teenagers stole some cars. They went to a cliff to play a game about heroes and cowards, and they were trying to prove that they are not cowards. So two of them drove a car towards the cliff. Then they should jump off the car when it was about to reach the cliff. Whoever jumps out early is called a chicken, and the other one is a hero. As a result, in the movie, there was a person who jumped out at first and became the chicken. But unfortunately, the winner was stopped by the car and couldn't jump off. Then he fell off the cliff with the car and died. So, based on the movie, in 1959, when the world was still in the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union, a famous mathematician and philosopher Russell proposed the game theory model, which is the famous game of chicken. Actually, he changed the plot in the movie a little bit. He said that in the current world, the two major powers, the United States and the Soviet Union, are competing for hegemony of the world. And actually, their competition was just like two drivers who drive on the same track and they drive towards the same side. During the game, both of the drivers can choose to drive straight or turn. If both of them choose to turn, then they will be safe, but also will be teased by people. Let's say in this case, both of them get 2 points. Then, if one turns and the other one drives straight, then obviously, the person turning will be chicken, and the person driving straight will be the hero. And then, they will get 1 point and 3 points respectively. Besides, if both of them choose to drive straight, then they will be crashing into each other and die, getting 0 points. This is the game of chicken from Russell. Based on these rules, we can draw a payoff matrix just like this. Then, we can find something interesting from the matrix. Firstly, for this case, both players will have the worst payoff. Nobody wants this situation because they don't want to die together, right? Secondly, both sides want to maximize their payoff. So how can they do that? It's very simple. If A can only choose to drive straight, then B will definitely choose to turn if B doesn't want to die. So this situation is actually a Nash equilibrium. Vice versa, this is also a Nash equilibrium. In these two cases, neither A nor B want to regret and change their strategy. Obviously, there are actually two Nash equilibriums in this game. However, A hopes that the final outcome is this Nash equilibrium, and B hopes it will be this Nash equilibrium. So, in order to achieve their best Nash equilibrium, both of them must adopt a strategy. This strategy is to disguise themselves, which means that they have to pretend they have a great determination to drive straight, so that his opponent will believe that you would never turn. For example, A can just throw the steering wheel as soon as he gets into the car and show this to B, right? Seeing this crazy action, B will definitely turn and A will win. But player A has to be very careful when disguising. For instance, what if B is a madman? He saw A throw out the steering wheel, he also do the same thing. Then both of them must die in the end. Or, unfortunately, something wrong just happened. B's steering wheel just break down. So, in this game, we should pretend to be desperate, but we should also make sure that we leave ourselves away. This is the very essence of this game. Then we can use this game model to explain the Cuban Missile Crisis. Let's review the cause of this crisis in brief. At first, the United States deployed some missiles pointed at the Soviet Union in Italy and Turkey. In response to the United States deployment, the Soviet Union also deployed its missiles in Cuba, pointed at the United States. Similarly, both countries had two choices, concede and fight. And actually, comparing to the game of kitchen, concede is equal to turn and fight is equal to drive straight. Also, if both of them choose to fight, then a nuclear war will happen. Therefore, we can modify the previous matrix into this one. They are actually the same. The development of this crisis is also very interesting. Actually, it was not very long, with only 13 days in total. It started on October 16, 1962, and was over in October 28. But in this short span, mankind had come to the brink of destruction. On October 27, the crisis developed to the highest peak. At that time, the US dropped some bombs to a few Soviet submarines around Cuba. Actually, the US didn't want to attack the submarines, but just to send signals to ask them to float up and get inspection. However, the Soviet submarines did not understand. Then they thought the war had already begun. So some soldiers suggested that it was the time to use the nuclear bomb in the submarine. Moreover, at that time, the Soviet army had a rule that if the submarine cannot reach Moscow and get attacked, they have the right to decide whether to use a nuclear bomb. But it needs the consent of the 3 highest commanders on the submarine. At that time, the other 2 commanders had agreed. But the 3rd commander firmly disagreed. His name is Arkhipov. So they finally decided to float up for inspection and contact with Moscow. So this man pulled mankind back from the brink of the nuclear war. So what's the response of Soviet Union? It also pretends that he's going to fight. At that time, some American planes ran over Cuba to conduct reconnaissance. Then the Soviet Union just used missiles to shut them down and kill the pilots. Then the US military was very angry. Then the hawks in the army suggested that they must carry out an airstrike against Cuba. But once they done this, it's equivalent to attacking the nuclear facility of the Soviet Union. This would directly trigger a nuclear war. In the end, Kennedy, the president of America, thought about it again and again, and eventually decided to cancel the air raid. Then he pointed the missiles at the Soviet Union as a deterrent. So Kennedy adopted a rational strategy at this point. So let's look at here more carefully. In this case, the 2 countries actually entered the second stage. Everyone pretends to show a determination, but at critical moments, they will concede again, right? So how was this crisis resolved? In fact, both Khrushchev and Kennedy were very worried that a true world war will break out. Finally, they reached an agreement. Kennedy agreed to protect the safety of Cuba and no longer invade Cuba, and the Soviet Union withdrew his nuclear facilities from Cuba in exchange. And Kennedy also decided to remove the missiles from Turkey and Italy again. In this way, this crisis was perfectly resolved. Although this event is not very long, but these 13 days are definitely the most dangerous period in human history. Once there was an irrational action, the Third World War will break out, destroying the whole planet through nuclear weapons. The US Secretary of State Dulles once said, "We are not afraid of going to the brink of war, but we must learn how to get to the brink of war without falling into the war." Obviously, this kind of ability is essential for every country leader. Kennedy and Khrushchev did well in this regard. In conclusion, in the game of chicken, actually it is not stupid to be a chicken. The stupidest thing is to be a madman and die with your opponent. Actually, in the real life, we can often encounter situations similar to this game. For example, 2 cars want to cut in the same road, or the workers strike and negotiate with the factories. So, in these situations, we must learn how to pretend to be desperate, but turn into a chicken at the proper time, preventing the double lose situation.